Practice. We were the kids that were practicing. I feel like it's like no one ever said you can't see it. Not see. Why is it? Oh gosh. Oh no.
One person can make me fast.
Well, it's not. It's not 8:45.
Hello.
During the time between past.
You look mighty fine. Yeah. You home for days off? Yeah. Wow. They can be off early. They let you survive. Hello. Came with the uncle. Hello, everybody. How are you, Miss Wall?
Every year, beginning in 1978, the Rebbe's birthday has been declared as Education Day by the President of the United States. What does the Rebbe himself make of all the pomp and circumstance? An address on the Rebbe's 80th birthday.
Good going. Your wife had some system. She had the little JBL speaker. It was pretty awesome the other night. How you doing?
Sam, trying to get it ready.
Is he here? Is the rabbi?
Und sie können auch Spiel
It
sein.
would be great if you could
Als
have
die
the
alle
light on.
Medines von der ganzen Welt.
You'd have to widen the screen and push it back a teeny bit. A little bit smaller because it's cutting off.
I know. Something.
Push it back a teeny bit.
Whoa.
I know why.
So was he in New York?
He was in New York. Yep.
Very smart. Very smart.
Yes. And that's why we're able to get
Every year, beginning in 1978, the Rebbe's birthday.
Kovi, und Vater, Isolton, בבחירות החופשי,
Just a teeny bit.
ich allein nicht bleiben den Weg von Zedek וישר, ושולם ושלווה, und in alle Jero, was echt alles zu diete. Und als Vorsteher von der Bewegung, haben wir sicher gehabt und gehabt im Covid zu bekommen, den Brief von dem Präsident zusammen, mit der Deklaration, zusammen mit der Umweisung von der ganzen Medina, wo die Nekude im Beruf ist, als der Inja von Chino, was wir geredet schon bei Erfolgen noch, ist doch das eine von den Jeseden, auf welches erhalte jeder Hebre, jede Gruppe, jeder Volk, und hängt das auch von Beruf, was sie sich stellen ein, der Pschino, der Ziel von der Jugend, wo die Jugend der Widerloschna Jotura, der Ossis von dem Volk und von der Medina, und die Schafe Halechler nach, at the education der Kinder ist das zu sein, und damals ist mir gesichert, wie es hat gesagt, der Kocher mit Odom, at Gam Kiyaski bei Yosef Mimeno, wenn der geht schon eine Reise von der State von China, und selbst lebt den ganzen selbstständig, und tut mit Selbstständigkeit, ist mir sicher, wie bald bekommen dem richtigen Kilo, wird sein Aufführung bis die Knöpfe, bis seine Gott ältere Jahren, wird aufführen, wie sie da zu sein. Dazu fordert sich eine zweite Sache, beschafft darf einstellen sein eigenen Kilo. Und als dem Kilo, die welcher darf Mohammed sein, die Kinder in den einfachen Sinn von Kindern. Und welche die Kinder in Spoli, was die auf welcher kann Maschpia sein, ist dort auf der Ruf ein Herrscher Gommel, als jeder geht zu dem Kino und als welche zu seinen Pulis bis Lauf, darf sich nicht beinen sein, sich hereintragen, in Tachlis Habir schon, für die was ist da sein ganze Ziel, für die was ist selber schaffen geworden, als nie welche schamische Skeli, ist beschaffen geworden, gesehen zu sein, als Schlier von den Lebensstunden, שהשולם שלי שולם שני של הקודש ברוך הוא, הפרנטין שולם ונרדוס in der ganzen Welt und nur du, der Gott ist wohnen, wie gerufen beloschen am Medina der Reflection, als tragt sich herein, wie sie darf zu sein, in das Kide, in sein Tafkid und in sein Schlichus, is auf der Dämmelt, als geht darüber dann noch so viel auf der Pfeil und eben von dem eigenen Schiener und dem Schiener von dem ganzen Arum, is auf Dämmelt, wer der Schiener und Hechert beschleunigt. Das ist der Hechert, der Covid, was wie gesagt früher, ist das Lehle Quäde, die Lehle Quäde bis Sabbat, das ist der Covid und eine Erkennung von Tätigkeit, was gewidmet geworden, herrschte 200 Jahre in der 91. Richtung von Hereinbringen, Ardus und Scholl zwischen Iden und zwischen Völkern und zwischen Iden und Mittelvölkern und in der ganzen Welt im Ganzen, also werden Leode Kuhl, Schem, Echot, Amodechet, Gewege werden im einzigen Tod, aber dort von ist Bondenus, reintrachten sich in der Mitte, wo das, wie gesagt, in Wolfbach steht, der Schlichus und der Ziel und der Motor, wo der Rebesteller beschaffen jeder Mensch und alle Menschen, wie gesagt, früher, leschamisches Chemie, durchführen, die Anweisungen von der Rebesteller, was heim ist der Chol, mit der Scherba Mitzvah Bnei Meach, wie Eche der Mond und zersprochen, in der Deklaration, wie der Mond friert, und wie hier Rotzin, auch das soll der Herz werden, und durchgeführt werden, Befehl, die meiste Befehl, was am meisten Ruhe liegt, weil das dieser der beste und der ärmste aller kennen, zu die, was getan werden, ansonsten der Präsident berät schon, als sie sehen, als sie Mazvier gewesen und sehr unweisig ist angenommen geworden und durchgeführt geworden, was die Befriedigung kommt sich nicht, zu der Befriedigung, was man kann gerne und man darf gerne und man gibt, mit der Akkordesteder Bitwolle, durch Echsegen den Dank von dem Covid und von der Durchführung und Machlichkeit, die Sache mit dem Ziel, als was sie begründet geworden, auf die Scherba Mitzvah Bnei Meach, also sein Lasheves Yitzoro,
Please wash in the meanwhile. I'm going to give a few minutes for the people from the other side of town to come. So wash in the meanwhile, start eating, start taking chayim, then we're going to continue. This Rebbe video is part of the Farbrengen that we watched here as a hachana for Yud Alef Nissan from Tashon Beis, where they celebrated 80 years Shmoinim Shana for the Rebbe. So this is a part of that Farbrengen that we learned. There are copies of that full Farbrengen on the table over there if anybody wants.
During the time between Passover and Shavuos, we count each passing day. The Rebbe teaches the Torah lesson in time management.
Der Linie von Geschirr Vereine versteht, als der Zähltag nicht erzählt Meister, nicht erzählt Geburi, nicht erzählt Machschove, erzählt Tag, der Eintag, danach ist durchgegangen noch 24 Stunden. Zählt und sagt, dass ich in 2 Tagen und danach durchgegangen noch 24 Stunden. Zählt und sagt, dass das ein schlechter Jahr was mit jeder ein geht mit der Pschute. Geschaß in Mechabe und den Piro Schamile in der Cheder Kum, aber das ist nur einmal, in was besteht die Mitzwe, da steht die Mitzwe ab 10 Tag. Was ist das im Ganzen nicht verstanden, mit betrachtet, in was besteht die Sache von 10 bepasst. Es soll zu bewahren, soll nicht verlieren, wir sollen dann nicht kommen zunehmen und soll wissen, wo haut, der soll können, etwas Zustand sagen. Der einzige Sache ist selbst, was ein Mensch hat auf der Luft geschritten, nicht mehr konnte es dann zunehmen, nicht konnte es verlieren, es soll die Zeit muss machen. Schaß geht durch Rebbe und Mishled, es im Ganzen in Balabosmi. Dieser Mishled wird durchgehen, sie nicht durchgehen, hängt nicht ab und her. Ewan kim in Hoge nehmen, und der Rebbe hat eingestellt, allein Bezu, und der Rebbe hat eingestellt, dass geht, Rede noch Rede, nicht mehr und nicht weniger, nicht so ins wenig, Gott in der Massach. Und ich sah, dass Rebbe soll gehen von morgen, wo ein Teil der Szene sagt, dass das ein Leben ist. Vielleicht sagt, kochen wir so in der Scheile, was kommt zu von 10? Nicht konnte es verlieren, nicht konnte es werden zunehmen, nicht konnte es durch Nächste sein. Aber die Gehen sagt, dass es da nicht. Und nach jedem sind der Ruf mit früher. Ab 10 Tag, wo der Bier, was hieß, ab der Tag, hat in sich ein Tachlis, wo da ist der Tachlis, wo der Mann sagt, also noch gebracht an ihn Chassene, mit allen Klotzischen Bedauern, und neben erzählt nicht den Tag, wo verliert an den Tag. Wo der Bund ist am Musar Haskell und am Musar Nitlo und am Musar Achia Chroch. Aber ich habe Sarit guckt auf die Seele. Und das geht mit der Trefel, als es geht durch die Regel, wo guckt auf die Seele und tut gar nicht. Ist das nicht der Pschat, als gekonnt hat damit und hat nicht getan, das hat verloren unter den Regeln. Wat een gegeben den Reger, lo omol gewolle, soll durchgehen den Lebensten schlicht, durch den Ruf, was het machen von den Reger. Aber der Reger wird werden als Sache, als lebendige, als Sache, was hat sich an Inhalt, hat sich an Inhalt verbunden mit dem, was hat das Schaffensmacht, wie Teres am Magi, wie gebracht mit Duber, das Ehe, da ich sehe, der Mutter. Von Taylor bekam Legemes, ein Punkt wie alle Nivroim, und der Rebester Beschaffensmacht. Und der Rebester Liboda, Kodesh Baruch, Dover Rechot, Beimone Levatolo, in die Schau der Rebester Beschaft den Regel, was am Chazes Betule, bechol jeden Tag mit Meister Brecht. Wie Teres aber schämte, wie Schara liegt der Mune Baruch. A jeder Regel wird beschaffen von das Neid. Ganz meiste Brechen, Eche, der Hetze mit sich als Mann, Und der Rebbe gemacht, jeder Mensch und befragt jeden, weil Schlier, soll zählen die Lekte, als jeder Tag soll sein verbunden mit der Meistität, in dem man verbunden mit Loeme, in Klolis als man verbunden mit Gott und Lomo, die Wolle, die Chance doch, als es steht in der Schachli Sifre Musse, als Odom Dei al Libut Domo, Reine Dei al Libut Yomo, ist das nicht der Pschat, als man sagt, dass gedem es auch wissen, als sei darf sein, als wir Schole, man sagt das mit der Machora Chita Kifa, Haitoch, als Madach am Medaille von Libut Domo, ist Allah's Kammer de Kammer, als es darf sein, die Dalle al Libut Yomo. Die Teilen, als gar nicht verloren. In die Teilen mit der verlorenen Tod von seinem Leben, und das bekommt sein Leben schon, wohl bei Yom, wie sie steht bei den Nächten liegen, Avrom sagt in wohl bei Yom in Deutsch zur Open Seher, als Avrom ist gekommen mit allen seinen Tät. Jeder Tod hat gehabt, was zu beweisen, als das gewähren hat Tod, was nicht ist. Und das ist Avrom, Ojivi ist der Tod.
Okay, and the final one. If you didn't wash yet, please wash.
Thank you very much. I can't get my book at the other and begin to go to.
Is it all yours or from the bank?
I'm the same. That's what you can you say. Thank you very much.
It's mine.
Only
Try.
Birthday is also good out of the city. Today. And Russia is going to be my next day. Next year, we make sure it's coming. Rebbe asked where you got this money.
There's so much money, so much they always get a much blessing, and they much more. And so we got to a of course.
Okay. Nachum, can you put the lights on?
From my wife.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, before we begin, welcome everyone, welcome Abay, to the special Farbrengen in honor of Yud Alef Nissan Farbrengen. We are lucky to have a very special guest that came all the way from the other side of America, West Coast, Los Angeles, to join us here in Buffalo for a special Chachana Farbrengen. Halavai, that we should be zoifer, that the words that we hear here should go into our hearts, and ifalu pulasam, and we should turn around things that are going here from better to even better, and all that need brachos and yeshuas, begashkas and baruchnias. This is a Farbrengen, and we have plenty of l'chaim baruch Hashem. Make sure to say l'chaim and wish each other good things. Without further ado, Rabbi Reuven Wolf from Los Angeles.
So 120 is super big, a very big number. Usually the number 120 represents a culmination, completion of something. Say Muslim, live to 120. It's important that when it comes to the Rebbe's Yud Alef Nissan 120th birthday, we understand that we're not talking about the completion, but we're talking about the beginning. And that is because just the thought that was inspiring me for Yud Alef Nissan is that Moshe Rabbeinu reached the mayor of the Esrim Shana Loichil Hayoim. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm 120 years old today. And that's the day that that's the day that Moshe Rabbeinu went out to Har Nevoy. The Eibishter basically said to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're not going to pass the Yarden. This is as far as you're going to bring the Jewish people until this point. We know that there is really only one power of Goyel in the world. Geula comes through the Neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why the Rebbe always tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe told us many times, Goyel Risha and Goyel Achar. The first Redeemer was the last Redeemer. At the same time, we know that when the Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu, take the Yidden out from the Tzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu argued and he said, Shlach Nabi Yat Tishlach. Send in the one of the Perushim of the Yat Tishlach means send in the one that you're going to send in the end of days, send in Mashiach. Why are you sending me? So is Moshe Rabbeinu Mashiach or Moshe Rabbeinu is not Mashiach? And the answer is that there's, in a sense, you can, it's almost like two incarnations of Moshe. It's the same Moshe. And Moshe Rabbeinu's Neshama becomes this Achid and unified with the Neshama of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And that's how the Gila doesn't mean that Moshe Rabbeinu won't be here. You have so many Chazal say that Moshe is going to be there by the Beis HaMikdash. You can ask Moshe Rabbeinu. But still, the power of redemption is the power of Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, we know that when the Rebbe says in the Rebbe Tishlach Nabi Yat Tishlach, in the famous Chayesara Sichel Beis, so the Rebbe there explains how it's really one shlichus. Moshe Rabbeinu shlichus and the shlichus of Melech HaMashiach is one shlichus. It's two phases in one shlichus. Phase number one, phase number two. Because had Moshe Rabbeinu gone into Eretz Yisrael, past that line, the Eibishter made him a red line. And Moshe Rabbeinu passed that line and brought the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael, and he would have been the one who would have built the Beis HaMikdash. It would have had to have been a binyan Nitzchi, it would have had to have been an eternal home for the Eibishter, it would have been in the sense the third Beis HaMikdash, and it would have been already the Gulish. And the Eibishter knew that that's not the right, that it shouldn't be that way, for whatever reason. We have to go through the ההולדת, we have to work it out from below, all the difficult labor and hardship of the last 3,500 years almost since that time. So the Eibishter stopped Moshe Rabbeinu and he said, your work right now at 120 has reached its completion. So when it comes time for Moshe Rabbeinu to pick up for where he left off last time, that's the way the thought came to me, is that Moshe Rabbeinu begins the second phase of his project, of his shlichus, of his Indian, when he is 120. So we are looking forward to this Yud Alef Nissan with enormous excitement. The Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, we can say phase 2. The Rebbe himself always, whoever, the Rebbe always says, it's Pashtus the Moshe, the Friedrich Rebbe, the Moshe Shabbat, very powerful words. And the Zohar says that Moshe Rabbeinu himself is throughout all the generations. And the Iker, the Zohar says he's going to come back in the generation of the Geulah. So the Rebbe and Moshe is one the same. So now that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe, is reaching 120, we can expect that things are going to get moving. The Eibishter will help. Things are going to get moving. Someone mentioned to me, I saw today, someone put that, the kapitel Tehillim, the Rebbe's kapitel that we're starting to say, the Shinal Amalo is a Se'ena Elahorim. The Noshim Tzidkani is know that when you have a baby, and Bachlali, before they have a baby, you take along the Shira Malis when you go into the hospital to have a baby, that the labor should go to Shudah, that the birth should be protection for the baby, but that the birth should be Ba'atzlacha. You take along the Shira Malis. So now we're holding Bashira Malis and we're waiting for the birthing of Mashiach Tzidkenu. The Geulah is called the birth. And we're waiting for that process. This year has all the arrows pointing that Zahu Hashana, this year has so much going for it. It's not just this year so much. It's piling up after everything that we've had in the past. But this year is the cherry on the top. In addition to Moshe Rabbeinu having the doubling up of Melech HaMashiach and Moshe, in terms of the Geula, there is another combination of neshamas, but that one is a trial, not a double, like the triplets, and which also is related to the coming of Mashiach with three neshamas, or rather the same neshama evolving in 3 stages, and that's associated with the concept of Adam. And the Rebbe made Adam Arishan. Adam Arishan really was supposed to manifest and channel and bring down the Eibishter's Malchus into this world. Through Adam, the Eibishter would exercise his kingship. Hashem, that's why Adam Arishan on the first day, we say on Friday when he was created, Hashem Malach, Tagei La'aretz, that's the Shir Shel Yoim. The Eibishter's Malchus expressed through Adam Arishan. But for whatever reason, it seemed like that back then in the Midbar, the world wasn't ready in a mature state to be able to receive that. So Adam Arishan fell. Chassidus explains that it was a fall, but it was also the Eibishter was also involved in that fall a little bit, if you can say. No, the Eibishter kind of made sure that he fell. It wasn't meant that we go into perfect utopian existence immediately. Because then the Geula would never be ours. Moisa Mashiach and the ultimate Dina B'Tachtonim would never really be ours. It would be a gift from above. The ultimate pleasure and enjoyment of something is when you worked on it, when you owned it. So we go through the long, challenging history. And it's all hinted to, as the Shloah Kodesh says, in the name Adam, and maybe it's even brought from before the Shloah. I was actually in the beginning of the year, I gave a share on this, and I was looking for what's the first marker for it. I don't know how, I definitely found it up in the Shloah, but the Shloah Kodesh is good enough of a marker. He says that Adam stands for Adam, David, Mashiach. And Adam, David, Mashiach is basically the summary of all of human history. Adam, the first human being, the first, the presence of a human in this world, the Nabal Alien, the one that can facilitate the Eibishter. And what happened? Adam, it says, Adam b'yakar Bali Yolin, called Bali Yolin. And Adam didn't even make it past the first night. He didn't lodge. He didn't stay overnight in his greatness. He immediately fell on the first day. According to the Medrash, the story, the Rebbe says in traditional language, not necessarily. That's traditional language. According to the Medrash, the Chait of the Eitz Hadas and all of that happened within the first few hours. They didn't even make it to Shabbos. So Adam Yikar Lo Yolin, he didn't stay overnight. Adam fell right away. And then the world plunged into darkness, and we experienced what we call a free fall. If you take a look at the first 20 generations until Avraham Avinu, the world was falling, and there was no one able to stop that fall. Noach managed a little bit, but then afterwards again the world continues to plummet, like literally plummeting, down, until we like hitting rock bottom. And from the depths of depravity and darkness comes the light of Avraham Avinu, whose Heir Mizrach, who begins to shine godly light into the world. He starts to shine, as we know that Malchus kingship is related to the moon. And the moon shines in the darkness. And the moon goes through a 15-day period until it reaches its light. First there is the Holדת Alavan, there's the birth of the moon. And then it's a tiny little sliver. And it's a little bigger, the banana moon. It gets a little bigger and bigger until it becomes the whole moon. It takes 14, 15 generations. Avraham Avinu is Heir Mizrach. Avraham Avinu is the beginning of the Eibishter's Malchus in this world. Someone declaring Hashem's Malchus, the Eibishter as king, starts with Avraham Avinu. Yitzchak, Yaakov. And then it says that David HaMelech and Shlomo HaMelech is the time of Kaimas Siyara Bishlo Musa. The moon is in its full light. 14, 15 generations. David, interesting, David is Gematria 14. Because David is the 14th generation. And that's when the Eibishter's Malchus took on a very real, concrete reality in this world. Because in the beginning, we were a godly people, but we were a bunch of nomads. We weren't an established entity. We were living in a mobile home. We didn't have an established sect, and the Yidden also didn't have a melech, they didn't have a king. And the ultimate strength of the people is a melech. And even more so, that since Malchus needs to manifest the Eber's Malchus, so that you didn't have to be an Am in a land and have a capital and so on and so forth. David HaMelech was the one who established Yerushalayim. I was teaching this idea once to girls, and one of the girls said, "Hey, in Shloimeh," she said, "in Misper Katan." This is okay. She said, "In Shloimeh, the Misper Katan," in other words, when you reduce and take away the zeros, Shloimeh is going to be 50. David is 40. Shloimeh, Shin is 300. Lama is another 3, is another 3. Mem is 4, is 10, and hey, it's 15. So David is 14. Shloimeh is 15. Together they are the full moon. And that's why David HaMelech is in the middle of history. David HaMelech, he's like the middle point. But the moon, we know, wanes, waxes and wanes. It grows, and then it again begins to, diminish. And for 14 generations, until Tzidkiyahu HaMelech, who I think is the last king, and again he's 14 of the 15th generation from David Shloimeh, and then Malchus ben David disappears from the world, or at least in a revealed, open way. The Malchus is not revealed. The Malchus is in a state of concealment throughout the thousands of years of darkness. But then we are, as we say in Kiddush Levana, Shehei Masidim L'Schadish Kamoisa. There's a renewal of the moon. There's a renewal of Malchus based David. There's a reappearance. The moon comes back again. So, and that's the resurgence of Malchus based David and Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu. So Mashiach is the final manifestation. So now, here's a very interesting idea. Maybe some of you heard it. But if you say David HaMelech is the center and Mashiach is the ultimate realization, and Adam is the beginning, let's try to see how are we doing in this middle state or this. So if we're going to say that it's exactly in the middle, so we have to ask, when do you count Adam's life? Adam lived for close to 1,000 years, 930 years. So when are you going to, which age of Adam are we going to count as when he represents the Aleph of the word Adam? The Aleph of Adam at which age? Well, Adam we can only recognize on the first day, because that's the day that he was in all of his glory. That was the day of his greatness. By the time the second day came along, he had already fallen. So Adam is counted on his very birthday, birth month. So day number 1 of creation. David HaMelech, when do we count him? What is his life to say the important point of David HaMelech? When he was born? Maybe. But really, you should say when David HaMelech becomes king over the Jewish people. David HaMelech had 2 phases in becoming king. Phase number 1 was when he was 30 years old. We find Bechlal Malchus is associated to the number 30 because it's associated with the moon, and the moon has a cycle of 30. So David HaMelech was 30 years old when he was ascended, and Yosef HaTzadik was also 30 years old when he became king in the Mishnah Lemelech Mitzrayim. The number 30, and that's again what's so powerful about this year, because this is 30 years since the Rebbe told us that Mashiach is already in his palace. And then we had a concealment, we had a darkness. But again, the moon works in 30 sets of 30. This is 30 years since Tafshinut Beis and all the powerful Giluyim. And afterwards we had the darkness. That's 30 years later. It's really interesting. So 30 is the number, the lamed, and also it says in Pirkei that Malchus Nitnis B'Shloishim Miles, the kingship is acquired with 30 levels. So David HaMelech became king when he was 30, but that was not on the entire nation. That was only on his tribe. It was only on the Yehuda. Then it took another 7 years. It took until Avner ben Ner went and he campaigned, literally. He went on a Kabbalas HaMalchus campaign. And he went around to all the Jewish people and he brought them to David. And they should be machter David as a king. 7 years later, it says Avner was killed. Sadly, Yoav killed him. But why did the Abish do that to Avner? Because he delayed Malchus based David for 2 years. That's what it says. Because he started his campaign. He allowed Ishivashis to be the king after Shaul passed away. It took a while. Anyways, David HaMelech was 37 years old when he became king over all of the Yidden. And another difference is, the first time that he was king, he was in Hebron. He wasn't in Yerushalayim. When he became king over all the Yidden, when he was 37, he was in Yerushalayim, the ultimate capital of the English Bismarck. And how, and which year of creation was that? That was in the year 2981 from creation. If that's the case, and we say David, that's the middle of history, we take 2981 and we double it, we land at the year 5782. So it's pretty interesting how all these things are coming together as we're approaching Yud Alef Nissan Farbrengen, Pei Beis, 120 years of the Rebbe. We're at the point of Adam, David, Mashiach. In addition to all of that, it's a Shemitah year this year, and we know that when Chazal talk about the time most auspicious for the Geula, we are Chakav L'B'chayim Sheyom. In the sense that you shouldn't make any cheshbonos, because the Geula can come any moment, any time. But that is not to say that we don't get extra excited in the more auspicious times. They never waited for Mashiach with breathless anticipation every day in the year. The Shemach knows which day it was. But yet the Rebbe showed extra enthusiasm and excitement. The Nisan Nigalu, the Nisan Asidim Nigalu. Right? It's extra in Chodesh Nisan. Extra Zmanim. There are Zmanim for Tisha B'Av is a big day for the Rebbe Mashiach. Because Mashiach is Noyed with Tisha B'Av and things like that. So now, when we're coming to the Chodesh Nisan, and it's Shemitah. Chazal tell us the whole, look at Masechta Sanhedrin, the whole process of the Geula is a process of 7 years. And if we get to it a little bit later in the Farbrengen, we'll analyze these last 7 years. And we'll see that literally what the Gemara describes over there, if we just modernize a little bit the terminology to adapt to a modern world, we see that what was going on in the last 7 years is not what it says in the Gemara is going to happen during the 7 years leading up to the Geula. These last 7 years were a roller coaster. Things that were going on were just unbelievable. It was the most unpredictable time that things were like crazy. It intensified in the last 2 years. So the world's going haywire. So but what does it say in the Gemara? The Matzah Shemitah ben David Ba. What's Matzah Shemitah? Matzah Shemitah don't have to wait till next year for Matzah Shemitah. Matzah Shemitah means the end of Shemitah. So once you're ready in Chodesh Nisan, you're ready in the end, in the second half of Shemitah. You're over the hump. So Matzah Shemitah. And David Ba. So there's a lot to this here. And one more very important thing, which also is again, puts all the excitement on, particularly the time that we're in right now. And that has to do with another idea that we say that the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos that we have to thank the Eibishter for giving us a triple Torah on a triple day, on the third day, to a triple people. Through the Moshe Rabbeinu was number. The Gemara lines up a whole bunch of things about the number 3. 3, the Gemara says, the Eibishter gave us a Torah that's divided in 3. Torah Nevi'im Yisrael. He gave it to a people that is 3. Adam Nevi'im Yisrael. And he gave it to us on the 3rd month, Chodesh Hashlishi, which is Sivan. And on the 3rd day, because he told them to prepare for 3 days. And he gave it to them to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the 3rd one in his family, Miriam, Aaron, and Moshe. Rebbeinu ניסן adds on the side, the Rebbe says, look at Rebbeinu ניסן, a whole bunch of other things. And on number 3, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Levi, and Levi is the 3rd shade. And Rebbeinu ניסן says that Levi has 3 letters in it. And Moshe also has 3 letters in it. And they go on and on and on and on, finding all the lining up of 3 when they get to Mount Torah. And really, what's the difference? Why is it so exciting? And if it would be 17, it would be a problem. If it would be any other number. Why 3? So the Rebbe explains it, then he says, because the whole idea of Torah is number 3. Because Torah comes, what's 3? 3 is a unifier. 3 is a shakhan. It takes 2 separate inyanim and 2 inyanim that are contradicting each other. Number 3 is the one that brings things together. Chibur, Shalom, Achdos, Tiferes, unification. And what does the Torah come to do? To make Shalom in the world. It comes to bridge the bridge between heaven and earth, between Elokus and the world. And the result of Torah is Mashiach. So the Rebbe already in Toshin Ben Ches, you can find it in the Sikh, I forgot already when it was, one of the Sikhs in Toshin Ben Ches. The Rebbe gets very excited that Toshin Ben Ches is 3,300 years since Matan Torah. So the Rebbe says this is an incredible milestone. It's 3,300. And the Rebbe connects it to the idea that the power of Torah is 3, and the fact that it's 3,300 years since Matan Torah. And last year, Toshin Pei Aleph was 3,333 years since we went out of Israel. If there was a period of time that it would take to get the work done in bringing about shalom between the heaven and earth, between the Lakus and the belt, and unifying it all, which the end result of that is Mashiach. The Rebbe told us already back in Toshin, already in Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, the Rebbe was already telling us that the work is done. But if there's any little leftover picture, the Rebbe said we polish the buttons also. But in L'chol Adayis, 3,333, we're done with that. So, like, from every angle, so if that's the case, let us say l'chaim. Let us welcome Mashiach in a very real way. And I know for many people, because we've heard it so many times and we've gotten excited so many times, we sometimes are afraid to let our hearts go into that place. Because we don't want to get burnt. We don't want to chas v'shalom have a letdown. It doesn't happen. So therefore, we sometimes are afraid to do that. But we have to transcend that and get past that. Because we know the emes definitely is happening. And we will believe it not. We believe it because it's emes. We're expecting it to happen. So l'chaim lebracha. This Yud Alef Nissan, and even before Yud Alef Nissan, no one can have any kindness if Mashiach is revealed before Yud Alef Nissan. Definitely for Yud Alef Nissan, I should see already full as callous, taken from the Adnan, Shulchan Aruch. of the things we are living in a time of surprises. Surprise events that no one could have predicted, no one could have planned for. Things came rolling in utterly unexpected. Some to the good and some that we haven't seen yet the good. Some real blessings and hidden blessings. We're talking about events that huge. COVID, no one saw COVID coming. No one saw a global pandemic. No one saw the entire world going into lockdown. No one saw the human face covered up on the spot across the entire world. No one could have conceived something like this. Huge event. But that was utterly unexpected. It was utterly unexpected. Sadly, what happened in the run last year, my boy, said gut. No one expected Surfside, just like that. The building comes down. No one expected a war in the 21st century in Europe. A war with the nuclear power and the flag and the threat of where did this come from? These were all things that happened so quickly, so fast, without any way of possibly predicting it. There were some nice things that also happened that no one expected in the last period of time. No one would have predicted Donald Trump. No one would have predicted the release of Rebbe. No one would have predicted that it happened so suddenly. Remember when it happened? Everybody was dancing and singing. It was such a joy, spontaneous. Achdus by Yidden, like a flash. It was some Mashiach in the moment. Well, Mashiach is a day or two. Everybody, the whole world were united with this enormous joy of Geula. It happened so unexpectedly. No one would have believed that Rebbe was always crying for, not the Chas v'Shalom relinquishing any piece of land, definitely not strategic place like the Golan Heights. On the Purim, there was an announcement regarding the Golan Heights, Yerushalayim. These things happen so unexpectedly, but more. Today's day, the most popular Chalavoi trip is Dubai. Everybody from Pesach programs, everybody's going to Dubai. Who would have ever thought something like that? Talking about the United Arab Emirates, talking about sworn enemies of the Jewish people. And now we're talking about the Abraham Accords, 7, 8 nations, 6, 7 nations. Even the Turkey guy has been such an anti-Semitic. Is lately seems to be having some kind of a transformation. This stuff is wild stuff. Who would have expected something like this to happen? And all these things are coming about. So we're living with the surprise element. Now, the biggest surprise beyond all surprises is as much as we talk about it, and as much as we think we're preparing ourselves, it is still going to catch us by surprise. The Galus of Melech HaMashiach is going to happen in such an unexpected moment. You find that the Rebbe, when the Rebbe talks about, it says in the Shir Hashirim, so the Medrash says, Melech HaMashiach. So the Rebbe adds that everybody's going to point, a lot of it's boy, they're going to point with their finger and they're going to say, Hine the Melech, the Rebbe says, Kvarba. In other words, it's going to happen so fast and so suddenly that we're going to wonder, hey, how did that happen? It happened. We're going to be just becoming aware of it after it happened. So we're all going to find ourselves online to go to greet Melech. And that's a pretty, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty intimidating thought. Going to greet Mashiach came, we're talking about the greatest. It says, Yodim, the Esau, the Gama Ma'oid. He's higher than the other. He's higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. He's higher than other Benisha before the sin even. Gama Ma'oid. There's no one as great as Mashiach came. And he realized that these small little whatever peeps are going to file by Mashiach Tzidkenu. And we're not talking about theoretical, abstract dreaming. We're talking about halacha l'maisa. We're talking about something very, 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 very real about to happen any moment. So the question is, how do we stand and how do we greet Mashiach? Very intimidating. The good news is that as much as Mashiach is the ultimate, holiest being that ever to live, the godliest being, he also manifests the most Amas Yisrael, the greatest, the love of the Eibush that the Eibush has for all the Yid is flowing through Mashiach's heart. So his love to Yid is boundless, is life. And therefore the Tzaddik HaKohen from the Bleed says that the Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to be a person who can be Malamed Chus even on a Rosh Hashanah, even on the worst Neshama. So Mashiach Tzidkenu is like Levi Yitzchak of Raditchev on steroids. Like ultimate, right? So that's good. So we know that a good eye. But on the other hand, the question is, with what do we greet Mashiach? So I have a dear neighbor who's probably responsible for all my Mashiach Mashiachs. For turning me on and getting me so Mashiach about Mashiach is my good neighbor across the street from me at the Naftali school. So for those of you who know him, right? Naftali, he's crazy about Mashiach. On fire. So he has this thing that whenever you meet him, he dances with you. We want Mashiach. We want Mashiach. Stamps his feet, and it's like, whenever on the street, in shul, in the marketplaces, wherever he goes, he dances. We want Mashiach. Or he dances cheap. It's even better than that. He has dollar bills, not dollar. He has $2 bills. He has like a mint in his basement. I don't know where he gets all this. Packs of $2. My kids know they go across the street and they know if they're lucky, sometimes they'll get a whole pack. Dude, and the kids on the block, we have all the yeshiva shalits and shekigos on the block, and they meet the Torah, and if they say we want Mashiach, or better, they say yeshiva. You give them knowledge, the parents across the street are almost faking. The kid will all say yeshiva and they with him. Anyways, there's one to the Sheshiva. This Sheshiva came from Eretz Yisrael. And so this mazel, he met Naftali, I think it was for sure. And in Los Angeles, we don't discriminate against anybody. So Naftali grabs this kid, and he dances with him. That's the one, Mashiach. And he danced Yechi with him. Obviously, you can see the guy was so uncomfortable with it. When he was done, and he went over to Naftali afterwards, and he said, I'm thinking about it. It really helped me out. He said, I'm thinking about Mashiach. I'm going to go greet Mashiach. What do I say? Shalom Aleichem, Good morning. What do you say? Now I know. Yechi, I'm doing that. That's how you greet Mashiach. So the question over here is, really, what does it mean to greet Mashiach? So the Rebbe gives us the answer. The Rebbe says, in order to greet Mashiach the right way, you have to greet Mashiach. When you are Mashiach, you can greet Mashiach. You can look eye to eye with Mashiach. What does that mean? You can greet Mashiach. So the Rebbe teaches us all the time that every single one has a nitzutz Mashiach inside of it. One of the beautiful places that Rebbe derives it from is on Yom Tov. We take out the Sefer Torah and Shalosh Shegolim. We say Hashem Ki Yerav B'Chan. And afterwards, what do we say Yiratzim. And in the Yiratzim over there, we say the Yiskayim Bonner should be fulfilled by us. Mikra Shekosah B'Nocha Olav Ruach Havai. They will send upon him the Ruach, the Spirit of Hashem. Ruach Chachmo, Bina, Ruach Gevura, Eitzah. And the Mashiach has the qualities. And it's talking about Melech HaMashiach. And we're asking the Yiskayim Bonner which should be fulfilled by us. Or are you shmendering over here that you're asking that the greatness, the milas that it says about Melech HaMashiach, you're asking about yourself. So the Rebbe said, because every year there's an Yitzchak Mashiach, like the Yitzchak from Chernobyl, saved from Oil 9, because the Rebbe's grandfather. And where he says over there that every year there's a Yaakov, Every Yid has a spark of Mashiach. So in order to greet Mashiach, you have to be Mashiach, which means you have to open up your spark. Or when I travel on the plane, that's on my side. Why is it on my side? It's to bombard it all day long. With a lot of travel, with a lot of prayer. Everybody's trying to move. Everybody gets this, that. On the train, the phone doesn't work. So you have to drive. Coming from Los Angeles to New York, it's 5 hours. And you have the best excuse. That's a good excuse. I'm traveling. I was traveling, right? So on the plane, it's really complete disconnect. But lately it's not such an excuse anymore because they give you already options. They have Wi-Fi on the plane. Just 35,000 feet in the middle of the sky somewhere. And yeah, if you plug in, whatever, some of them might give you free, other people might give you pay a fee, and you have Wi-Fi on the plane, you can be sitting 35,000 feet. You can connect from up there. My wife can send me a message. They connect. Why? It depends on one thing. It's turning on that Wi-Fi switch, and then you're on this. You're picking up on this. I don't know how Wi-Fi works, but some kind of frequency that enables you to connect. So there is this Mashiach Wi-Fi. If you flip that on switch, then you're on the same wavelength of Mashiach. Then you can communicate. There is a connection. And the Rebbe was basically waiting for all of us to switch on our Mashiach switch. What does that mean? It means unplugging the Nitzutz Mashiach that's in each and every one of us. What's that? What does it mean practically? Yud Alef Nissan. The Rebbe, Yud Alef Nissan. The Rebbe's birthday. Now Nisan, the Shachas of the Rebbe to Nisan, for statement, we all understand. Nisan is the Chodesh HaGeula. The Nisan Nigalu, the Nisan Hasidim Nigoyim. In Eretz Yisrael, yesterday, today, whatever today it was, yesterday, it's one of the Chaver HaKnesset from the part of the government. It's very, 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 let's not speak the Chaver Yisrael, but not the best government in Eretz Yisrael, kind of also making room for Yud Alef Nissan. You see the government in Eretz Yisrael falling apart. So in any case, this lady went out, she left, she couldn't stand the anti-religious sentiment before them. Particularly related to comments on Pesach. The day there was exciting WhatsApp going around. Old and Avus, all the good stuff coming on WhatsApp. Anyway, so there was a thing about this, about the 11th letter, things will be passed on that. I don't know if you saw this, it's really, really interesting. But on she went out and because they wanted to, one of the things where they were going to stop the ban against comments in hospitals. Eretz Yisrael, it's a Yiddish place, and religious, you're not religious. Chametz b'Pesach, everybody understood, you don't have Chametz. So every public institution was a Chametz museum. So, Kalipa can't handle that. So they were working to this now to stop that and to allow free choice. And you could have Chametz in place. It bothered her to touch her Yiddish and Hashem. To the point she said, "Mishimai finish." So she bolted out of the government yesterday, and right now it seems like the future of the entire government is hanging on a hair. Right? So the husband of hers put out a statement about his wife, and he put it out with a picture. The Nisan, the Nisan, with a picture of the all the Jewish people know that talking about Geula, the face that belongs on that thing is the Mamash. So the Rebbe, Goyal Shel Yisrael, the Rebbe's birthday shayes to the month of Nisan. Why the number 11? The 11th day of Nisan. But we know that the Rebbe is connected to number 11 all across the board. Because the Rebbe became Rebbe when Chodesh Shvat, and Chodesh Shvat is the 11th month. The Ashtei Astar, it says in the Vedic Torah, it calls it the 11th month. Hoyel Moshe Be'eres HaTorah Hazois is talking about the 11th month. It's Chodesh Shvat. Not only that, the Rebbe became the Rebbe on the 11th day of Chodesh Shvat, because the Big Rebbe passed away on Yud Shvat. The day that Rebbe became Rebbe is Yud Alef Shvat. So that's the 11th day of the 11th month. And it wasn't the 11th year, because the Rebbe, the Big Rebbe passed away in Tavshin Yud. And the Rebbe's, the Kabbalah Sanasius was a year later. which is in Tafshin Yud Alef. So the Rebbe's birthday is on Yud Alef Nissan. And his Kabbalah Samasias is 11 on whole level. And the Rebbe talks about what's the Indian of number 11. The Rebbe says the Friedrich Rebbe was number 10. And that's what everything about the Friedrich Rebbe is 10. His first name and his second name, Yosef and Yitzchak, are both starts with a Yud. And it's interesting, the Rebbe says when the Friedrich Rebbe signed his name the last year of his life. Very interesting. The Rebbe points out that the Friedrich Rebbe, if you look in the Friedrich Rebbe's letters, you'll see the last year, whenever he signed his name, he made his Yud like a Safris Yud, like a Sefer Yud. And it becomes more pronounced until literally the last 2-3 letters that he wrote, it's a mamish of being Sefer Yud. But the Rebbe says, and that's what the Rebbe says also, the Rebbe passed away on Tafshin Yud, the Stalin Tafshin Yud, and his whole life was born in a Yud year, meaning in a 10. He was born in a Tafshin Shem, so it's 10 in a year of 10. And then he became Rebbe in Tafshin Pei, which is again a completion of 10. And then his Nesius was 3 periods of 10 years in Russia, 10 years in Poland, 10 years in America. Everything is a perfect symmetric of 10. And the Rebbe says, why? Because number 10 is the perfect number of perfection. When you're Megala Elokus in the world, when you reveal godliness in the world, but within the parameters of the world, then you have the perfection of 10. The 10th is holy. Because the 10th is the world, not just a world with the godliness of the world revealed in it. Now, what's number 11? The Rebbe says number 11 is already relating to not a world with the godliness of the world, but number 11 represents it represents the level of the English that is believable, infinite, and boundless, as Hashem is without any boundaries, without any definition. That's number 1. What's number 11? 11 is that we draw down into the world the Eibishter himself as he is. And the world and the Eibishter become totally one. With number 11. So now the world becomes completely assimilated and unified with the Eibishter. That's number 11. And that's Mashiach. So what does that mean, Taka? You see, from when the Rebbe became Rebbe, what do you see is the Rebbe's energy? The Rebbe's energy is believable. No limitations, no boundaries. The Rebbe sets off with the mission of the Faratsta Yomo, the Kegma, the Foyma, the Negma, we're going to break through all barriers and walls. Yiddishkeit and Kedusha and holiness is not going to remain relegated to certain pockets. It's going to encompass the entire world, all the continents, all the cities, across the entire globe, everywhere, and reaching every type of a person without any limitations and any boundaries. The Rebbe is not satisfied with Yid, he wants Goyim, everywhere. Palasta, like it says by Yaakov, giving Nachma Blim and Sodom, that's number 11. And that's been the Rebbe's energy all along. There is no, and that's in terms of places, reaching the entire globe. But it's also in terms of energy, in terms of attitude. One of the hardships, I think to myself, I connected with Chabad when I was 17 years old. Came from a part house, a house, a little bit of a teacher I am. Maybe I would have learned, and I would have had a nice little shul, and I would have taught, and I would have been fine, and everything would be very good. And sometimes I think that the more I think about the Rebbe and the hardship in the sense of the Rebbe, is that the Rebbe you cannot satisfy. The Rebbe you can never get a pat on the shoulder and say you did it. No, you'll be tired, but they got it. That's not outside of the Rebbe's vocabulary. But the Rebbe is a demand and a powerful, boundless, endless demand for more and more and more and more. No matter what you gave him, the Rebbe wants him. So many countless stories of people coming. They tell the Rebbe they did so and so, and the Rebbe, that's it. More. I just saw there was a shliach. What's his name? Aaron Dov suffering, right? AD suffering from London. So he ran the Moshes in London. And he was doing everything. He was involved in every single Moshes in London. And he came into Yechidus to the Rebbe. And he said to the Rebbe that he has too much on his plate. He just can't carry this load. It's too much. So he's asking the Rebbe if the Rebbe can take off one of his achrayos, something to remove him. Now imagine a chassid coming to the Rebbe. He must have thought a long time before he did it. So he comes in because man is boying mayim adnofesh. He can't. He can't do it. He has no space in his precious. He cannot. And the Rebbe looks at him, and the Rebbe told him, "Du tust noch nicht genug. You're not doing enough." You see, that's what you're going to get there. The Rebbe said, "Du tust noch nicht genug." So he immediately says to the Rebbe, as a chassid, he says, "Was noch soll ich tun?" And he looks to the Rebbe, "What else should I do?" And the Rebbe looks at him, and the Rebbe says, das, was du hast getan bis jetzt, and this that you have been doing till now, hast du getan mit eigenen Keuches. These are things you're doing with your own power. You're doing it with the Keuches of the Mishaleach. You're doing it with the power of the one who sent you. And with the Keuches of the Mishaleach, kannst du tun. And with the Keuches and with the power of the one who sent you, you can do way more. In other words, you're a conduit for Shaleach is the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is the channel of way slave for the infinite of obstacles that runs beyond and has no, and therefore it's believed for, and therefore there is no limit and there's no boundary. More and more and more, the demand is endless. But there's also one more very important idea regarding this of Yud Alef, the number of 11, the transcendental power of Yud Alef, the complete gevul of Yud Alef, both in terms of reaching every corner of the world. Whatever is achieved, there's always more to achieve. A boundless and endless appetite, a boundless and endless drive. But one more idea to it is that to be given over to something in a way that is adasof, which means to be given over to something without a limitation, is really the definition of madness. Madness means it's the seichel, the mind, and there's craziness. And when one's obsession with something is not measured by any measurements of the mind, then that's crazy. That's madness. You see, number 10 includes the spectrum of seichel, because number 10 is the 10 spheres, right? So seichel, and then there is midas. Now, seichel can be a very, 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 very powerful motivator. But the thing about, since what Chassidus says, learn, we have an understanding, and through our understanding, we motivate, we get ourselves inspired. But the thing about the mind is that the mind puts a price tag on everything. The mind estimates the value of something and puts a price tag on it and says this is its value. Meaning to say, based on the value of the appreciation of the mind, that's how it dictates to you, to your emotions, how much emotional energy you should invest. And as a result of that, how much you should give over of your resources, of your time, of your energy to whatever. And being that the seichel is limited, it always, even when the seichel is estimating or appreciating the Eibishter, it also sets a price tag. This is very, 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 very important. It's the Eibishter and his interest and his desires, but it still has a certain uptouching, if you can say, a certain definition. But that's the seichel. But beyond the seichel is the nitzutz Mashiach. The nitzutz Mashiach is number 11. Number 11 is not measured by seichel. Number 11 is the part, the nitzutz of the Yitz Neshama that is one with the Eibishter, as the Eibishter is beyond all sfidos and all attributes. And over there, it's infinite and boundless energy. And on those levels, the Eibishter has desire. How much is that desire? How much does the Eibishter want tefillin? The Eibishter wants tefillin b'li gevul, b'li shum cheshbon, beyond all reasons, beyond all definitions. What does the Eibishter want to deal with the Tachtonim? The Eibishter wants a home in this world and with endless desire. And sometimes when you look at the Rebbe and you see the drive of the Rebbe for dealing with the Tachtonim, for filling every nook and cranny with godliness, this infinite and boundless. Oh, it's because the Rebbe is unified totally with the Eibishter, that the Eibishter's desire of having a deal with the Tachtonim, that's the Rebbe's desire, because this is a total unit, total oneness. That's craziness. That's madness. And the Rebbe told us the first minor in Basi Lagani that when he's upping the game for Chassidim, he's basically saying, now the Avodah is Shtus T'Kedusha. Shtus T'Kedusha means holy madness, holy craziness. I want you all to go crazy for goodness. I want you all to go crazy. I'm empowering you to all be, to be crazy for Elokus, for Gedlichkeit, without a limit, without boundaries. And that's the definition of Lubavitcher. A Lubavitcher is a mad person, mad about godliness. When I was a kid in Barkov, we always knew the Lubavitchers were the crazies. There's the Namal, but this is a good Meshugah. It represents a boundlessness. So now the whole world is watching what happened in Ukraine. You've seen Shluchim in Ukraine. Shluchim stayed, the bombs were falling, and the families were there, the Siddur Nefesh. People are whoa. The emphasis, the very fact that a Shluch goes out to Yehudatzville is also a madness. One of the Shluchim in Ukraine is a friend of mine, Michiel Levitansky. He's in Sunni Ukraine. In Sunni, I remember when I once went to Hadich. I was in Hadich once because we made a Sefer Torah. Supposed to the Baal Shem Tov, a whole crazy miracle story that happened at the Sefer Torah. And I had this thought that we could write atheists like all of the Rabbi and all the places. I took the Sefer Torah. We took it to measurement. And we also wrote, we went to Hadich. When I was there, Yechiel, he was 2 hours away. Finally, he heard someone he could come from Farbrengen. So he came from Sunni to meet me. In any case, when he said he relates, that he moved with his family from, he had already Mishpach when he went out for Shluchis, and he moved from Los Angeles. He lives in Simcha Monica, right? The nicer, next to the water in Los Angeles. And he moved to Sunni Ukraine. So when he went to get his papers, he wanted to apply for Ukrainian citizenship. I guess the Rebbe says, Nicen. Yeah, when you go to a place, you got to become part of the Toshev of the place. That's the way you can lift it up, by kind of identifying with the Makom HaShlichus, that you are one with that place. So he went and he applied for it, and they declined his application. So he goes to the lady that gave him back, and he said, why did you decline the application? So she said to him, because for a guy to come with his family from Los Angeles, California, to Sunni Ukraine, it's one of the two. Either you're a spy or you're a crazy person. And we're not looking for either of these. But that's it. This is a total craziness. So now when the war happened, right, there's Shluchim were there. Now, you know how my grandmothers used to tell me a lot about the first night in 1940 when the German planes were coming in 1939 in Poland. They call it the Blitz. It was the most frightening thing. They were dropping bombs. And the bombs that were falling down that the Russians were dropping, this is a little bit of an upgrade. Imagine. And they were standing their place. They weren't leaving. A lot of the mishpachas left because headquarters called them back because they possibly were afraid for the safety. I couldn't take us back. So the shluchim left, and I don't know how many of them, but quite a few shluchim went right back into it. Because the shliach knows, the Rebbe sent him there. He's there. What kind of judgment? Until the Rebbe tells me it's time to go, I don't leave. I'm there. That's a commitment to be equal. That's total insanity. That's knowledge. That's craziness. But within that craziness, within that madness, where is the nekuda of madness come to its ultimate, is when it comes to the union of Mashiach. Because in Lubavitch itself, you see what we call the normal Lubavitch and the crazy Lubavitch. So what does it mean? The normal Lubavitch is the Lubavitch that pretends to be normal. But the endless every Lubavitch is crazy. Because then you put up some kind of a normal front. And then there are those where the energy is kind of the craziness, the bent is so strong that you can't hide it. So it comes out on the surface. And the Rebbe himself said, in one thing the Rebbe said, the Rebbe said about himself in English, I am crazy about Mashiach. If there's anything to be crazy about, if there's anything to be taken with a madness, with a devotion that is without an end, it's Mashiach. Mashiach is everything. So now when we ask ourselves, with what do we glean to Mashiach? We glean to Mashiach with holy madness. We need to unplug, and the only way to unplug to that dimension, that the Rebbe unplugs that dimension. But the Rebbe is Yud Alef. Our deepest kashrus for the Rebbe, especially as a chana for Yud Alef Nissan, to unearth, what does this kashrus do? Bond, the more we bond, the more the Rebbe gets inside of us. The more he opens us up. Opens us up to what? Opens us up to the purer, higher, deeper elements of our Neshama. Such a level of Mesiras Nefesh. Out there says that every Yid is getting Mesiras Nefesh. Every Yid has this madness. When the Yid goes from Kiddush Hashem, it's madness. Now the Rebbe says, I'll be chesed. It's not because you're thinking you wrote the Earth. It's craziness. No, it takes Chas v'Shalom situations where the Yid is cornered. Someone is trying to Chas v'Shalom rip the person away from the Yiddish. So then this craziness comes out. The Rebbe calls it Chach B'Shem Nefesh. It's l'mayla l'tam l'das, the Perek Chesed. And that reveals itself. And then the person does something crazy and gives his life. But other than that, it doesn't come out. We know we need to live with Mesiras Nefesh, not die with Mesiras Nefesh. How do you live in that energy of Chach B'Shem Nefesh? How do you live with that Mesiras Nefesh? That comes from the Rebbe. That Rebbe reveals and brings out this infinite drive, this level of power. So, as Yud Alef Nissan, we intensify our bond with our Rebbe. We learn more of the Rebbe's Torah. The Ikir we've done where the Rebbe himself said he's crazy about the Inyan of Mashiach. Here is, in those last sikhs that is bringing out in us, the deepest, the goodest, that's what the Rebbe keeps on talking about, to be Megala Mashiach Shebechol Echad Ve'echad. And that's how we begin. That's our preparation. So, L'chaim L'bracha. The other side, the other idea associated with number 11, but very interestingly, number 11 is associated with the dark side, the side of holiness. Chassidus, we know that it says that there are 10 spheres of solution. There's Achad Osar Kislev. There's 11 crowns of impurity. There's 11 crowns of impurity. Achad Osar. We also find that when the Yidden came to Eretz Yisrael, they went to the mountain Hargizim, Haribol, and they gave over there 11 persons. Yud Alef Nissan. The number 11 is associated with the forces of evil and the forces of good. So here we have a little bit of a dilemma, a question. What's the relationship? Number 11, so high, so beyond. It's infinite dimension of the and then at the same time, number 11 is associated with all the dark elements of the world, the powers of evil. It's explained in Chassidus that he understands that that's it through the koyach of number 11, we have the koyach and the ability to overcome, to destroy, to eliminate, which is one of the inganim of Hamashiach. Hashem will wage the battles of the Eibishter, and he will he will even overcome death itself. He will remove, he will bring about everything associated with darkness and evil is going to be destroyed or eliminated. And it says, it's Dafka the Koyach on number 11. We find that in one of the avodas of the Beis Hamikdash. You know, the highest avodah of the Beis Hamikdash was the avodah of Ketores. Ketores, we say in davening, Achad Osar Samamonim Hoyu Bo. In the Ketores, there were 11 Samamonim. And why is the idea that Dafka Ketores is associated with number 11? Because Ketores is coming to make a tikkun in the dark side. Ketores represents, Chassidus explains that Ketores is associated with avodas and tshuva. And tshuva doesn't come for the stuff on the bright side. Tshuva comes generally for the stuff on the negative side. Chas v'sholom, a person gets himself, his or herself around with stuff on the other side. And then, so the only way you can rectify and fix the damage is through tshuva. So tshuva's inyan is to even deal with the dark side of the unholy. And that's why the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, the main avodah of Yom Kippur is the avodah of Ketores, which has 11 spices. We want to eliminate, get rid of all the avodas and all the consequential darkness that those avodas Chas v'sholom brought. So Dafka number 11 of Kedusha has the power to overcome 11, which is the source of chayus for the unholy. But one thing is to destroy it, but really it goes much deeper than that. It's not just about eliminating darkness, it's about elevating the darkness itself. Transforming the darkness itself to holiness and to godliness, that's the power of number 11. As we see it in a Baal Tshuva. A Baal Tshuva doesn't only flush away the darkness. He doesn't just flush away the sin. Disconnect from the Aveda Chas v'sholom. The ultimate power of Tshuva is the doinus nasis kizochius. The very Aveda itself, and the very klipa itself, the nitzutz that's there, which generally cannot be elevated, it can't be rectified, it can't be reconnected, even that is brought close, and even that is transformed. The greatest darkness becomes brightness and becomes light. And that is the koyach of number 11. So as we're facing a world where we're still seeing what seems to us as a lot of darkness, and we know that the Mashiach's koyach of number 11 is to transform all that darkness, and the darkness itself should shine. So we see an interesting thing regarding the Rebbe teaching us about Mashiach. When the Rebbe teaches us about Mashiach, a fundamental principle that the Rebbe starts in Tazriya Mitzayra Slicha of Tashinun Aleph, and he develops the theme very strongly the next week, Achrei Mois, and in Parshas Emor, where the Rebbe gives us a phenomenal understanding of what Geula is and what Mashiach is. The Rebbe explains that the whole idea of Geula is not goodbye to Golos. It's not this dark pit, this enormous dark pit that we can never get ourselves out of. And finally, Mashiach comes and he schleps us out of this dark black hole, and he puts us into a very good place, and then he takes a big lid and a cover, and he covers it over the dark hole, and no more darkness, and you're not going in there again. He seals it, and we are liberated and freed from the dark times of persecution and darkness and spiritual struggle, and all these inyanim. It becomes a distant memory until we forget about it. It's gone, and so on and so on. The Rebbe has a very, very different explanation of what Mashiach does and how the Geula process works. The Rebbe says that the ultimate achievement of the Geula is that the Geula doesn't only come to redeem us from the Golus. The Geula comes to redeem the Golus from Golus. Again, the Geula doesn't come to take us out of the Golus. The Geula comes to redefine the Golus that liberates the Golus from Golus. And because the Geula comes to make from Goyla, Geula. By in bringing in the Aleph, the Aluf Shel Olam, and the Aleph is really the Aleph from number 11. When you bring the Aleph of number 11 into the 10, and you bring it all the way down into the Golos space, then what happens? It becomes from Goyla becomes Geula. And the Golos itself is transformed to light. So what does that mean? Golos itself becomes Geula. And the Rebbe explains how really being Golos from its very inception really is really all from the very beginning. Like the Rebbe explains in many cities, how the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, it was never really a destruction, it really was a building. It's a soiser on the Nas Livnos. The Rebbe explains that on the Allah. How can he keeps the Torah and destroy the Beis Hamikdash? If he's destroying the Beis Hamikdash, he's later on a prohibition. And the Torah says, "Leisasim came Hashem Elokeichem." You're not allowed to destroy anything of holiness. You know, Nebuchadnezzar didn't destroy the Beis Hamikdash. Didn't destroy the Beis Hamikdash. The Ebershter did it. But how was the Ebershter allowed to do that? So the Rebbe explains because it's soiser on Nas Livnos. It's not really breaking. It's not demolishing. It's really building. That the entire Golos is really part of the cube. And the Rebbe goes through the entire disease, building and going deeper and deeper and deeper of redefining the Golos. After they come. And the Rebbe says something really powerful this week in Parshas Mitzvah. The Rebbe says that we know about Mashiach, that Mashiach is called a Mitzvah. And the meaning of Zoysti Titus HaMitzvah beyond Taharas is referring to Mashiach Tzidkenu is inflicted. Saras is a form of infliction. It's a nega. And nega is the same letters as oineg. It's the total opposite of pleasure. And therefore nega represents the ultimate experience of pain and suffering. And it says about Mashiach V'hu Menuga. He is chas v'shalom afflicted with the afflictions. He suffers unbelievable suffering. And the Gemara says, when the Gemara tells us the names of Mashiach, the Gemara says one of the names of Mashiach is Chivra the Rebbe. Chivra is the Rebbe. He's the white one. He's the one who asks Saras from the family of Rebbe, of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And as Rashi explains, Rabbeinu HaKadosh was a very big tzaddik. And he had no reason, there was no justification for him to suffer. For chas v'shalom, any kind of imperfection in his own life. Sometimes suffering helps a person rectify something. But the Rebbe was a chassid gomer, and therefore he didn't deserve to have any suffering. And if he suffered, it's because he was the potential Mashiach. And therefore he suffered the pain of the Jewish people. And we know the famous story. What's the story? The Gemara tells a story about Rabbi Shimon Levi, who wanted to see Mashiach, and I think he met a Leoah, and he asked him, where's Mashiach, and I see Mashiach. He told him, no, I think he asked him only. He told him, when does Mashiach come? He said, you don't ask Mashiach. I have to look back at the stories, he forget. And so when the end was, he told him to go, he asked him, where can I find him? He said, outside of Rome. You have all the people sitting there next to the gate of Rome. And the people are injured, homeless people, they're sitting there and they're bandaged from their wounds. Can you imagine what that whole scene looked like? By the entrance of the city of Rome, the wounded individuals, you have like the veterans, that are amputees and people sitting over there. It's not exactly the area you feel very comfortable walking through. And that's where Mashiach is sitting. So he said to them, how am I going to know which one is Mashiach? Obviously, so he told them all the other, all the other people sitting there, they changed their bandages. Because you have to put ointments, so you remove the old bandages, you put on the new bandages, and they all take off all their bandages at once. And then they put on the new ointments and they put back on the bandages. But Mashiach doesn't do that, because Mashiach is on call 24/7. Just in case the Rebbe tells him it's time to go, he doesn't want to delay a second. So therefore, if he's not going to have his bandages on, it might take him a while to put the bandage. He takes only one bandage at a time, just in case. So I'm thinking about this Gemara for a second, thinking to yourself, bandages? Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to appear. At that time is going to be such a wonderful, beautiful time. The time of Mashiach eliminating all suffering and all darkness. Mashiach Tzidkenu himself is coming, and where are we going to see Mashiach? How are we going to see him? He's coming with his bandages. Doesn't make any sense. What's Mashiach doing full of wounds and men? And that's really the point that I ever say in this Sikh. Since Mashiach in Geula is not a separate era, it's not a separate entity. It's Mashiach is, and Golus and Geula are two sides of the same Indian. Golus is the intense moments in which we go through very hard things, and in that time we're actually connected to the highest energies of the Abishter. Through the pain and suffering and the Mesiris Nefesh that he didn't have in the time of Golus. That's when we're making the ultimate connection to Atzilus Mamash. And we're bringing the Abishter into this world. And it's revealed in the time of Mashiach. So therefore, if you go into any, school, maybe it's Yaakov, a yeshiva, whether it's Chasidim, whether it's Yeshivish, whether it's Sfardish people, go around the world and ask people, you believe in Mashiach? Yes. What do you think Mashiach will look like? What is Mashiach going to look like? I would imagine that most people say, I don't know. But you say, come on, use your imagination. What will Mashiach look like? So most people will tell you, in the general people world, not Meliovavitch, but in other places. What would people tell you? They'll tell you, I kind of always had I would imagine something like this. China joins Russia now in an alliance. NATO somehow, with our very big Chacham Biden over there, these things can actually pretty much play itself out. Reaches a point where literally nuclear nukes are facing each other. We're literally in the 11th hour, any second, the China's only going to push the button first. It's terrifying. Everybody, and suddenly Yidden are crying, what's going to give it, what's going to happen? And suddenly from the sky, the sky's going to turn all colors, reds and purple, and the drama's going to be in clouds come rolling in. And in the midst of it, in the clouds, you see the image of the face. And at first it's very blurry, but then it starts becoming clearer and clearer. This is a human being, an old beard. He's wearing these purple robes. It looks like a biblical figure coming out from 3,000 years ago. Wearing a turban, his face is radiating with light. When he starts talking and speaking some Yemenite Hebrew that no one understands. But we can see in him that his eyes are sparking, and he sure doesn't have socks, and he only has sandals, right? Like he came right out of the desert. And this is Mashiach Tzedkenu. And he says, and he smites all the wicked, and all the whatever, and he takes the Yidden to Yisrael, and he builds the Beis Hamikdash. And when we say to him, but Mashiach, we had a lot of wounds, we suffered a lot, we need therapy, we need something. And he says, Mas, what are you talking about suffering? I'm building you a Mashiach, I'm building you a Beis Hamikdash, I'm building you a beautiful world. I'm seeing, forget about it, drop it already. Jews like to complain all day. You're going to tell me about a war, like the grandmothers used to always say about what happened in the camps. And in the camps, and Auschwitz, my grandma used to say, you can even go to the food, and Auschwitz, we didn't have what to eat, right? So Mashiach says, what's up? Stop complaining already. Do we want such a Mashiach? Is this the Mashiach we're waiting for? The Rebbe is saying, Befeish not. The Rebbe says Mashiach is the tzaddik, the person who sits amongst the Jewish people during the time of Golus. And he is the person that the Yid turn to in all their pain and in their suffering. He is the person that they come to. He is the person they cry to. And he suffers their pain. He feels their pain. He knows their pain. A girl once wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe once sent to a certain shliach. And he should take a girl under his wing. The Rebbe said that this girl is your cousin. You should take, I remember who I read the story, I forgot which shliach it was. And the Rebbe said, look after her. She needs special attention. Okay? This girl was in correspondence with the Rebbe. She was experiencing, this is a girl that was literally being a tormented soul. She was experiencing an incredible mental anguish and emotional pain. And she was writing to the Rebbe her experience. And in one of the letters that Rebbe wrote her, the Rebbe says, I feel your pain. The Rebbe says, I feel your pain. She wrote back to the Rebbe, I don't believe it, it's not true. You can't be feeling my pain. Because my pain is my pain. It's impossible that you know what I'm going through, or you feel what I'm going through. But the Rebbe answered. Now, a mother, when the child is getting teeth, so the mother doesn't just know that the child is getting teeth and it hurts the child. The mother feels the pain that the child is feeling when in the teething. The mother feels that pain. So the Rebbe says, in that way, I feel your pain. I know it's true. It's I'm me and you're you. But as a mother, the mother of all neshamas, I know your pain. There's a famous story. There's a famous story of the chassid who decided to make things easier for the Rebbe. And what did he do? He decided to get the Rebbe the machine to open the envelopes. The Rebbe had a pack of letters every day. 800 letters were coming to the Rebbe. More or less, but imagine sitting there and the Rebbe didn't allow anybody to open his envelopes. Because it's confidential. People are writing confidential things. So the Rebbe himself would open every envelope. So Chassid realized how much work that is. He opens envelope after envelope after envelope. So he decided to buy the Rebbe an envelope machine and open it. It opens envelopes. So he bought such a machine as a gift to the Rebbe. The Rebbe sent it back to him. And the Rebbe said it makes too. The Rebbe says it's a nice gift, but it makes too much noise. The thought that it's very nice, I appreciate it, but it makes too much noise. So the chassid, who has madness, signature madness, wasn't going to have that stop. So he figured he's going to have to get a machine that doesn't make any noise. So he started looking around where can he find something. Every single whatever he saw had noise. So he managed, somehow he commissioned engineers and whatever it was to make him a machine that doesn't. He didn't know until he found. He was able to put together this machine that was opening envelopes without noise. And he brought the machine to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe returned the machine. And the Rebbe said the reason he's giving it back to the machine is that the Rebbe says when people send me letters, when they close the letters, they close it. Some people lick the thing, other people put some tape, other people buy self-adhesive envelopes and they close it back. And the Rebbe says then there are the people who close the letters with their tears. The Rebbe says the machine doesn't feel it. My fingers can feel the tears that were sealing the envelope. Mashiach sits with the Jewish people and knows their pain. Don't give me a Mashiach that's coming from out of nowhere where there's a new era. That's not what it is. What did the Rebbe write when he was a little boy? What's the Rebbe's letter? The famous letter that the Rebbe wrote to the president of Israel. The Rebbe is excusing himself why he's not addressing him as Nasi. The Nasi is a title that's given for the Melech and for Melech HaMashiach. And the Rebbe says we have a whole chila cheder from when I went to cheder. And even before I went to cheder. When the Rebbe is 2 years old, or even younger than that, I started imagining in my mind, the images of Mashiach, the images of the Geula. And what kind of Geula? A Geula that would be a Geula in a way that we're going to say, in a way, such a Geula that we're going to say, one that we're going to turn around and thank the English for the tzaddik of the Ghost. The Rebbe was never satisfied with the Geula. That's a new chapter. The Geula has to take away every bit of pain that ever was. It has to fix everything in the past. The Geula redeems every moment, every entity, every struggle, every hardship. That's what she is. And the Rebbe insists it. And that's regarding the Rebbe sees Melech HaMashiach. The person who's the Rebbe during the time of Golus, the place where everybody came and poured out their hearts. That's from Goyla comes Geula. And it's interesting, the Rebbe says the same thing regarding the Beis Hamikdash. How did the Rebbe explain to us? Also a Chiddush different, an unbelievable Chiddush. Everybody is thinking ground zero for where the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi is going to descend. I know it's different opinions. Beis Hamikdash is coming from above, the Beis Hamikdash is built from below, and there's all kinds of reconciliations to it. Whatever it is, where is it? Yerushalayim. The Rebbe explains in the famous Sikha Beis Hamikdash at the above that where is the Beis Hamikdash going to reveal itself? In the place of Golus. The Rebbe says a simple chedek. The Rebbe says because the Nasi Hador, the leader of the generation, who is the Mashiach of the generation, he sits with the Jewish people during the entire time of Golus. He doesn't, the captain doesn't leave the ship. The captain is the last one to leave. So the Rebbe says that the Mashiach doesn't go out of Golus until the very last Jew goes out. That means that the moment the Geulah comes, where is Mashiach Tzedekah? He's walking on Golus. And therefore, where the transition from the base of Rabbeinu Shebabadal, the center place of where the Yidden come to connect during the time of Golus, that very place becomes the base of Mikdash. And the base of Mikdash first will be the Slavish, the Rebbe says, in base Rabbeinu Shebabadal, and from there it will go to Yerushalayim. Again, the same theme. Geula is not a new thing. Geula is taking, that's the power of number 11. Geula is taking Golus itself and taking the Golus, including every aspect of the Golus, even the Beis HaMikdash, the building, the place that we know is the center of Yiddishkeit, the center of holiness during the time of Golus. Since that very avodah of Golus produced the Geula, that very place becomes the Makom HaMikdash. That's regarding Mashiach Tzedekah. That's regarding the Beis HaMikdash. That's regarding the entire process of Golus, and that's the secret of number 11. 11 has the ability to take darkness and transform it to light, because 11 is beyond the system. I'll give just a small little something. There's, when we said earlier regarding the Rebbe says the Golus, the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash is really demolition. So imagine if there's two companies. One company is a demolition company. So when you need to demolish the building, you call in the tractors, you hire this company, they come and they demolish. So what's their business? Their business is demolition. That's what they do. Then there's the construction company. After the demolition guys are done, and now you have a big crater in the ground, and there's nothing there. There's toil, come in the construction workers and they build it. So in terms of the metzius of the way things are, the demolition is demolition and the construction is construction. That's, however, in the actual product itself, and the actual project itself. But in the mind of the project manager, or even deeper than that, in the owner of the whole of the building, the one this is his project. To him, demolition is not demolition. He's not into destroying anything. He's destroying the building because that's all part of the process of building the building. So depending on where you're looking from you're looking from the yesh, from the metzias, from the yesh, from the something, from the perspective of 10, which 10 is already yesh, it's something, it's already the metzias of the world. Then what's good is good, what's bad is bad. But when you're looking from the mind of the planner of it all, and that's what number 11 is. Number 11 is transcending beyond the definitions of everything and going back into the Ebershter's mind and into the Ebershter's self. And from that place, you're looking at all the darkness that's in the world. The darkness doesn't have a metzias on its own. The entire darkness is only Yisra and Or and Achosha. So then the Chosha is part of the Or. It's not a new entity. And that's why Dafka number 11 has that. And that's why what do we say? May Ayin Yavra Yisra. Ayin is this number 11, as we know Ayin, the Rebbe's capital is Yud Alef Nissan, the Ayin Yavra Yisra. From that place comes the ultimate Ezri. The ultimate Ezri, the Yeshua, the great Geula, comes from Yud Alef Nissan. Because only through Yud Alef Nissan are we going to have a Geula that is going to redeem the past. It's going to redeem every element of concealment and darkness. That we married already. Chayim V'Bracha. ניסן.
gonna find some big. Might have to do a little searching.
Okay. Tell me what you want. I'll get you one.
Nika, your brother cut himself starch his shirt. Which one? Which one of your brothers? You could look like me after running it.
We're watching now something really interesting and exciting, and maybe we should give a lot of stuff. We should see this to its ultimate fulfillment. I was involved in a project the last 2 months. The idea came to me 2 months ago, initiated with a couple of people, and I really believe that it's holding words that they have now. They understood hopefully big Nicen and miracles that should be able to pull this off. Caution Yud Alef, the Rebbe said, said that the last thing that there is left to do, everything is done. The Rebbe said that we should say the Holland is over. The Rebbe said we should be zoyed and connect to the meaning of Kiddush L'Chaim. Okay, Kiddush L'Chaim is an important thing. This is the Rebbe connected it to the pasuk of Vikshuas Elokeim with David Malach. There needs to be Vikshuas Elokeim. You didn't have to ask and seek out the Eibishter, and they have to seek out David Malach. Which means David is not referring to David. It's referring to David Malach. He didn't need to. So if you look at the pasuk, the Vikshuas Elokeim is David Malach. Rashi brings over there that the Jewish people will not be redeemed until they will ask for 3 things. They have to ask for the Eibishter's Malchus. They have to ask for the Eibishter. They have to ask for the place of Mikdash. And they have to ask for the restoration of Malchus Mikdash. Look at the Metzudos. The Metzudos says it's not enough to ask the Eibishter for the Malchus Mikdash. But the Gamle from Melech HaMashiach, the people need to petition. They need to ask the Melech to be their king. Here's what it says. At that time, in Tavshin Nun Beis, 57, 52, after the Rebbe said to the Chassidim, put out us and can do whatever you can to bring Mashiach, it was a big slaveness, especially after the Rebbe spoke about a Vikshuas Elokeim and David Malach. It was a very big slaveness that we should do a campaign. And simply, people should sign an letter where they are asking Melech HaMashiach to be their king. It was like it was called Kabbalah Samalchus. It's one of the phrases that Rebbe said in the Aleph already. That Rebbe said, "Minoi David Malka Mashiach happened already." The only thing that's necessary is the iskashus of the Melech and the people. It has to be the deeper iskashus, which is the idea of Kabbalah Samalchus. And at that time, it started gaining momentum. The Chassidim were signing, and it was being brought to the Rebbe. No one knew how the Rebbe would react. The Rebbe's reaction was very, very positive. And the Rebbe was saying, let's go back a little bit. Tavshin Lamed, when they were finishing and they were doing the big Mashiach Sefer Torah, was Dafka Rebbe Tzin Shemtov, who at that time asked and recommended to the Rebbe that Chassidim should all learn mitzvahs minui melech derech mitzvah. Basically, the Chassidim should understand what does it mean, the mitzvah minui melech, say melech, because at that time, the Rebbe was preparing the Sefer Torah, the Mashiach. Everybody was sure, this is minui, we have to be mamana, so Tasim Alech HaMelech. The Rebbe said to Rabbi Shem Tov, the Rebbe said to him, Ein hazman yirama l'zeh klal. The time is not now. The time is not ready for this at all. So the Rebbe was never shining with it. The Rebbe just said, not now. Time is not now. Fast forward, when these Ksav Eskashnas and the Ksav Kabbalah Samalchus was coming to the Rebbe in Tov Shin days, the Rebbe was endorsing it in a very big way. The Rebbe said, Vazman Giram, and many Lashonis minus that were coming out like that. Especially when the women made the Malav Malka. The women made a big Malav Malka in 770, and the Kabbalah to make Shiach, the kids who spoke at the Malav Malka. It was an unbelievable time. The Rebbe was, the feedback they were getting from the Rebbe was awesome charts. You could see a lot of it on videos. And the women were coming, the Rebbe was. And then, of course, we had Chod Zayin Oder, number 1. And then we had Chod Zayin Oder, number 2. And then we had Yud Alef, and all these three things together caused, obviously, a big Shvina Sakela, a big shattering of the vessels, and a big breakdown. And people, someone shared with me something yesterday. I was at a dinner for Rabbi Reuven in Flatbush. And someone over there shared with me, his brother came over. He told me he lives in Munson. And he has a Litzvisher rabbi, and the Litzvisher rabbi was talking fire about Mashiach this past Shabbos. And was saying Mashiach is about to come, and so on and so forth. And he was actually saying that 30 years ago, the Litzvisher rabbi was saying, 30 years ago, everybody thought Mashiach was coming. Just think that's exactly the time there. He said communism fell and so forth. But then the Litzvisher Rav said there was a lot of darkness. We had a lot of tzadis. But he said an interesting thing. He says, when it says by the Torah talks about the birth of Mashiach, which was Peretz, the first one was the father of Moses based David. Peretz, Yehuda gets married, Yehuda is supposed to have a child, the future of Mashiach. It says over there, before Peretz is born, when Shema was born, I think the Lashon is Vahaya over there, they were in the city of Ksiv. There's a town in Eretz Yisrael called Ksiv. And the birth, or Yehuda was in Ksiv at that time. What does the word Ksiv mean? Ksiv comes from the word Chayzev. Chayzev means hopelessness. The only word, which word in the Hebrew, the Lashon HaKodesh, means hopelessness. Feeling like, in a sense, like, you were expecting something, and you're let down. You're let down about something. You expected something, you had a letdown, that's ksiv. So this rabbi was saying, the Geula comes dafka at a moment when everybody feels so hopeless. When the Hoya the ksiv, when there is the limit to Oysa, the birth of Mashiach happens at the time of ksiv. Okay, And the Rav also said, this is a really interesting thing, that ksiv is 2 words, Chav Zayin Yud Beis. And he said some kind of a Torah about Chav Zayin Yud Beis. I don't remember what he said. He said, but Rabbi Reuven said, I got so excited, I went over to him and I said, you know what you just said? You just explained to me Chav Zayin Adar. What was the biggest letdown for us, the knowledge of Ksiv? What kind of knocked us to the ground that we're still trying to recover from? Was when Chav Zayin Adar happened, number 1. Chav Zayin Adar happened, number worse. Ksiv, which he's saying means hopelessness, is and a letdown. The word ksiv is Chav Zayin Yud Beis. If there's Yud Beis months, so what's the 12th month? It's Adar. Chav Zayin is the day that the Rebbe had a stroke, and then they are, and the word Bichsiv has Beis Chav Zayin. That means it happened twice on the same day, and that caused such a shattering, such a hopelessness. So all these years, you know, when there was been an inspiration to try to bring about a renaissance, a reawakening of Kabbalah's analysis, it never picked up steam because most of Lubavitch was not on board. But as the world has been going through the last couple of years, such intense things, at a certain point you feel you got to do something. So I had this idea that maybe now it's going to work. Maybe it is going to work. I'm going to tell you this amazing journey and this amazing story, but I just want to give you good news. A couple of Yud people got together. We worked on this for 2 months. We got very clear instructions from the Rebbe that it needs to be a campaign that's going to be going along with the Shluchim and with Lubavitch, not around. But we thought if that's the case, there's no way we're going to get Kabbalah's analysis getting to go through today's days. People are so, whatever. Yet, miracles should be miracles. I mean, you should be seeing this in the next couple of days. We'll cover Yud Alef Nissan. This massive campaign. The most amazing thing is that Rabbanim from all across the spectrum of Lubavitch, from right to left, signed this unsigned. They gave the issue on the letter. It says everything. Doesn't say it with ICS that would get people upset. But yet it says very clearly what we are asking and what we're giving ourselves over to the mouths of the Rebbe. And so on. It's very strong words. And yet, I'm not going to say names now, but you're going to see it as Hashem when this comes out. We have a list already of 36 Rosh Hashiva, Rabbanim, Mashpiyim across the board in Lubavitch. It took a lot of work and a lot of phone calls back and forth. Some wanted changes in the Nusach and we change up to date or not. It's unbelievable. You'll see the names up there, you're going to flip. It's going to be unbelievable to watch. So there's big hopes that this Yud Alef Nissan final, and hopefully we can get thousands and hundreds of thousands of Chassidim, everybody across the world, signed on one Ksavas. His own Rebbe, Ginush and Golas, we're all backing the Mashiach. Let me tell you an interesting event that happened when all of this started. Hashem, all of this inspiration comes from the Nashim Tzidkaniyos. The women never, when it comes to Mashiach, women have a much deeper connection. The Rebbe himself speaks about it in many places. The women, just like the Nashim Tzidkaniyos, discussed them, the Yidden went out of the Tzlarim, the Nashim Tzidkaniyos, same women that went out there are going to be leading the campaign. So there's this woman in Los Angeles that after I had we would say, coming out of the closet Mashiach moment a couple of years ago, and I spoke in Crown Heights at 770, at the Kinnis in 770, and I'll just share with you something. I was terrified then. It was a long story. I was very, very scared. I wasn't looking for trouble. Doing that speech and speaking over there and giving that whole situation was very, very, very daring, to say the best. But I felt that something was pushing me that was beyond me, and I did what I did. But after I did it, the moment that was done, I was terrified, and I hoped that no one would watch that speech. And when I told me that it's on YouTube and it's going viral and everybody's watching it, I got terrified, literally. And I flew back from Los Angeles, and I flew back from New York, came to LA, and literally I was because I thought I could shut down my place. Everybody's gonna I had a shul, mind Yisrael, teaching the Baal Shem Tov's Torah. People will say, this is Lubavitch, he was a Shraga, but he's Lubavitch. Okay, now somebody's going on, so the last thing I needed for my organization, I'm going to have a total shutdown. I'm going to get letters from people are going to be angry at me and upset at me. I was really scared. I came back, and meanwhile, my wife keeps on sending me, oh, there's already 10,000 views. I came into my house, and the first thing I did was I opened the letters of the Rebbe. I had a whole consecutive, and the Rebbe says, and I'm a kohen, you should speak that they got to be mazin on those that are not whatever and wake them up. And the Rebbe said these words, was very, very strong. But another thing was my father at that time. My father's a Borough Park kid, but inspired a lot by Hasidus and Chabad and this is still much Yud, and so more people hear the shir from my father than hear it from me because he wants to know Borough Park. Anyways, he went to the oil, and he went there, and he would go again, and usually if he opens a letter, it's after it comes out, but this time there was a letter sitting here, and we go over, but it's a document box. So it was there, so he goes and he opens up the letter, and it's a letter, he takes a picture and he sends it to me, he felt it was fun. This was like mamish 2-3 days later. And the Rebbe is a very strong letter, where the Rebbe says, it was Yud Kislev. That day that my father had a story, it was Yud Kislev. The letter is from Yud Kislev. And the letter says, it's to in Australia, what's his name? I forgot, one of the founders of Chabad in Australia. And the Rebbe writes him a very strong letter, and the Rebbe says, I've talked to this Rebbe, und du wirst reden mit Courage. You will speak with Noya, you will speak pleasant, and you'll speak with courage. Thus to Zen, as a fellow deal of staying at the Vila of the Vikings, even those that are now standing at a distance are going to join, and I'm going to come on board as well. That was a very, very meaningful letter to me, and I knew that the day will come that everybody will join hands. There needs to be, it says regarding Mashiach, it says Mashiach is nigla, is revealed. The nichse is concealed. The chayzer nigla is revealed again. So just like it is in Mashiach, it is revealed, concealed, and revealed, so it is in the people that are connected to Mashiach. The Mashiach excitement is revealed. It went into, so we said earlier, Biksiv. It goes into Chavzai and the twice, it goes into a state of concealment, and then it resurfaces. Why? Because it's Emes. Emes me'eretz titzmach. Chassidim stood there and saw the Rebbe on the porch when we sang the Shir with all their hearts and souls. Chassidim were there during those sittings. Everybody saw it. We saw it with our own eyes. It's not someone that's telling us. So people, this is absolute Emes. It's not shy to erase it. Emes me'eretz titzmach means you can bury it. You can put a bunch of sand on it. But if it's Emes, it's going to sprout forth. It's going to come to the surface. So a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, one of the women in Los Angeles encouraged me, in honor for Yud Shvat, that we have to do a Kabbalah Samalchus. And I told her, no way. I had already enough. I don't want to do it. She made me crazy. And finally, I relented. She explained to me why and where and when. She spoke from the neshama. I touched me and I said, okay, please go. He felt I need to make a campaign. It was a few days, literally 2 days before your Shvat. And we're going to use the company called Platform. We're going to make an online forum. We're going to send it out. But you need to make a video about this. Make a video explaining the importance of Kabbalah Samalchus, explain how it's a double and so on and so forth. And I told her after much nudging, I said I would do it. But then the next day, I went to think what I'm going to say. I went to my show. It was at night, no one was there. I said, I'm going to sit and think about what I should say tomorrow. In the morning, she had a professional videographer coming to film me. As I started, it became very real to me that I'm actually going to do it. I got butterflies in my stomach. And I said, no, this is too much. The speech is done 7, but this is a calling for everybody to. I got scared. And I think to myself, I don't even know if this is the Indian, young Indian, Ishmael Indian. Okay, should I ask? Usually, Baruch Hashem, if I'm up to something important, I ask the Rebbe, and I was ready to unbelievable answers. And, but this I felt you can't ask the Rebbe. You can ask the Rebbe if you should make it, you should make a Kabbalist policy. It's not a question you ask the Rebbe. Right? So, then I'm thinking, well, who else can I ask? It was a type of a question that I felt that I'm thinking, you know, the Alter Rebbe is the same family. It's the same mountains. I don't know where. I know it sounds utterly insane and ridiculous, but the thought came to me out of nowhere. Said, again, it wasn't like it just popped into my head. Oh, so I said, what's the logic that came into my head? Why did Levi Yitzchak the Berditcher? Three thoughts came to my head. Number one, the Berditcher is a Yidden. He's always so loved Yidden, and probably he can't stand the others. Number one. Number two is a big mechut. He's mechut and very dear friend of the Alter. Number three, the Levi Yitzchak the Berditcher is number three. Oh, I know that the Levi Yitzchak the Berditcher is one of those people who worked with the system of opening up doors. How do we ask that? It became the beginning. It became the meaning of Chasidim. We opened the letters. If Levi Yitzchak works with that kind of system, because when they arrested the Alter Rebbe sent the shliach that it should be masking his name with Levi Yitzchak. When this shliach came to the Levi Yitzchak, he forgot the Alter Rebbe's mother's name. The famous story is that the Levi Yitzchak opened up randomly a chumash, and it says, Yaakov ki yashever ben Mitzrayim. Yaakov saw that there's shever means hope in Mitzrayim, and shever is Rosh Hashanah Shneya ben Rivka. So I said, oh, and Rabbi Yitzchak, he works with the system. Good, let's ask him. A few weeks before that, 2 weeks before, I had bought myself a new set of Kedushas Levi for the shul. Lately, by the way, the spud of the printing in recent years is so amazingly beautiful. And the Chassidish Welt outside of Meliובאוויטש, they've done a marvelous job of taking all the Sifrei Chassidus from it's a magnet, and they've done, and they mechaneach it, they have the unit on the bottom, very beautiful. They never wanted there's a land of Chassidus, but people should want Chassidus. There's a hidden spot. So this Kedushas Levi was a 3-volume set, beautiful set. I bought it 3 weeks earlier. So I walked over, and I wasn't in a mood of kidding around. I really was scared about what I was going to do. You know, yes or no, it was really frightening. I closed my eyes, and I was very emotional, and said to the Yitzchak, I'm asking you a question. So beyond the name, I need a very clear answer, no interpretation, but I have to pull from here, and you know, this is right or wrong. I don't know why I'm at that. In other words, what am I asking? Should I do a rule to draw to be ma'oided the malchus of Melech? Okay. I pull out the Sefer Kedushas Levi and open it up. Parshas Vayetze. And it's not like some people I know because the English and some of these people come to you. They say, I heard you can see you can open 3 pages this way, 4 pages the other way. No, I open up, my eyes fall right on this piece. Well, not even on the page itself here or there. My eyes go right over here. What does it say? Talking about Leah naming the Shvatim. And why? And Leah is naming Shevet Yehuda. Why is she calling Shevet Yehuda? Because we said like this, because Leah was serving the Eibush to them, the Midas HaMalchus, with the Midas Malchus. How do you know she was serving the Eibush, the Midas HaMalchus? Because she was then in a state of Apam, Oides Hashem. Oides is a submission, it's a divining, and Malchus, he says, is when you recognize that everything comes from the Melech. Everything, you surrender yourself completely to the Melech. So she was serving the Eibush to the Midas HaMalchus. Therefore, she was zeichet to draw down an energy of Malchus in the world. David was a melech, and Shlomo was a melech, and 15 generations of Malchus were drawn down because she was serving the Eibishter, and she was downloading at that moment Midas HaMalchus when Yehuda was born. Melech HaMashiach will also be a melech. Because of this, this is what I opened up. I think to myself, it hit me. There's no other page in Kedushas Levi where he's talking about downloading Malchus and ask the question, should I do a pula right now about creating a stimulation to draw down? So I got my answer. If you don't want to, Sometimes if you don't want certain answers, don't ask. But if you ask, you gotta listen. So the next day, I produced the video, and got some nice stuff. And then it got done. We made the campaign, but because we were struggling so much with the editing, we needed to get it perfect. I'm telling this lady, I said, you gotta put out the campaign. It's a retirement bonus. I mean, after the shot, no one's gonna be, now we have to catch the people where they're at. So they're excited. It ended up going out late at night in Los Angeles, once a shot. It didn't get the traction that it needed. It got a few hundred signatures. It did, but not what I was expecting. I was hoping big. All right. I flew to Chicago. I went to speak for Turin's shul that night, the next day, and very, very interesting. As I'm sitting there in the shul in Chicago, in the day after Shachris in the morning, or in Mincha, I don't know, so sometime, I'm thinking to myself, I gave it to them. You know, you're expecting right away this thing should go. Give it. You have to give it to them. A few days, maybe never thought it occurred to me. Maybe we should do it from Yud to Yud Alef Nissan. You give yourself some time, and we promote it, and we put it out there. That's how much I have. I'm toying with it. Yeah, no, maybe not, maybe yeah. And I remember I'm standing outside waiting for the Uber, and I look at my phone. Your nephew, Zali Yunus, sends me every day stuff. He has a Mashiach in it, and I get from him a voice note. And you see it's forwarded. You see that it's not him speaking. It's sending me something. And people send all day long. I don't listen usually. For whatever reason, something pushed me, and I listen to the thing. Turn it on. The Rebbe is talking, and the Rebbe says, "Der Eberste Rachmanes gehabt aus Yiddish hat gegeben. The Eberste gave us an extra month this year. Shalom Oberes from Yud Shvat bis Yud Alef Nissan. Because if you didn't get the avoided done if you didn't get to do the avoided during Yud Shvat, at least you have time to get it done with an extra Chodesh for Yud Alef Nissan." This is literally as I'm sitting and delivering if I should keep the campaign going till Yud Alef Nissan. The Poil Mamish, I didn't do much with that whole campaign. It remained as it is. I was invited to speak in New York, Chaf A Adar, for the women. The women had a big, for the Rebbe's birthday, the women had a big event in New York. So I flew to New York. I landed like at night. And I had an okay, sure. I figured the Evanson's yard site. A birthday, I mean. The Evanson's birthday, I'm going to go to wish the Evanson happy birthday before I go to the. I'm going to go to the island. I went, and I'm there, and I figured, okay, the Evanson was starting up into a Kufiyot test. And I never used to say that Evanson's up into. I only said so Chasidim, some Chasidim say that. Such a spitz Chasidim as nicht gewähnt. Sie das, und das at the Evansons, I think it was a freezing night. So I said Kufiyot test, and then I got stuck with it the whole year. So we had the 2 years Kufiyot test. But the interesting thing is that as I'm at the oil, I went in. And I'm in this transition period of being on regular Lubavitcher Chassid, and suddenly this Mashiach stuff is going on. So every time when I went to the oil, in the beginning I used to say minor Bosh. And then as time was progressing, I was having more and more hard time. How can we say things like you should sit there and enjoy that name? So I'm standing outside and I'm thinking, I'll say, should I take it to Hillel or am I in Russian? In the room there, the outside where they put the letter. I see the Rebbe's letters. I open up the Rebbe's letter, and the Rebbe's letter, I wasn't even thinking, it was nothing natural. Like, see the letters, I open it up. The Rebbe says, do this to you write to me that you're a Kodev or maybe Yitzchak of Radich. You're an Enoch, or maybe Yitzchak of Radich. And it says you should know that Yitzchak of Radich was a very close friend to the Alter. And we're talking about Chasidus. Even though we have tremendous redifus and all kinds of things, there's all glorification, and he did what he needed to do. A letter like this. And there's a little thought pops into my head. This letter referring to my answer that I got for a pitch. I had for a second I thought, I said, I don't know. And usually if I get a letter that's a minor, I always take a picture. So that this time I closed the safer because I didn't really pay too much attention to it. In fact, after I went to New York and I spoke to the women and I came back, or actually then I also came to Toronto and then we went back to Los Angeles. When I got there on the plane, thinking that letter, it's interesting, it should be in there. But I didn't know where the letter was. So I did a search. I was able to find the letter because I put in you can do a search today, I put in the Livy Yitzchak picture. And I went through all the letters that every man mentions in it, until I found the letter. And if I was mistaken, because the letter was meant to me that night, the date of the letter was Chav Hey Adar. Is that what the Rebbe is saying? You had an answer to the Livy Yitzchak prediction. Who resists the Tuzgarnish. In any case, but the good news, Baruch Hashem, is that now the thing is beginning to take on hands and feet. You'll be seeing it. Hopefully, it's. I think both Kiddusim and Eretz Yisrael, not the Mashiach kids. This year they had another kid. They, the Kiddusim, were masking to push this Ksavos Kashrus Kiddush Nifla. And hopefully it's going to have a lot of success. Everybody that can help when you see it going around, spreading it, especially it's on it yourself if you've done it before. It's something very, very powerful because the bottom line is Ein Melech B'Lo Am, and if there's an Am that's saying, you know, Kiyanu Amecha V'Atam Alkeinu, and generate what is necessary to get things moving. That's what we're doing. Always a step ahead. She's one ahead of the year of the Rebbe, is always one completely ahead. Reciting the Rebbe's kapitel. The Rebbe's kapitel that we just started saying is already talking about Sanaskim. It has already the idea of Kishamu Yoshua Kisois. The Rebbe is already in the place where there is already the throne of I saw this. One of the people that are working very diligently on this whole project together with me is Zusha Silverstein from Montreal. He's the one who got hold of it. I don't know how he did it. A miracle. So he puts out this weekly publication, 2 weeks ago, we had over there a little story that Nautic, which was close to the next. He was talking with the Rebbe during the trial of his Swadim, and they were discussing some of the, obviously there was the whole the whole story of the Swadim caused the Rebbe's tremendous aggravation, especially the Rebbe's own family. Terrible aggravation. So he said to her, Mashiach will be parted from all this. So the Rebbe answered, Mashiach Shendah, the Tafel Baran Ken. Something like that was her rush. Mashiach is here already, it just needs to be recognized. So he stopped right away and he said to her, why don't you tell her? He said, goes up there, why don't you tell them? So she said, it's best as it comes from. It's better as me that himself, something like that. So, the Chlal, we're looking at the kapitel. The kapitel, so if you got to the Shir HaMalis, if you pay attention to the kapitel, you see everything that's going on in the world is inside the kapitel. When COVID-19 hit, we were saying Kufiyat test causes COVID. Real test is 19. He said that, we were saying that during that year. This year, everybody was saying COVID-19, and that maybe was a huge shmita for the whole world. The next year, we started saying Kuf Chav. The one that I was very excited about Kuf Chav because Shina Malis, David Melech said Shina Malis when It's corresponding to the steps of the Beis Hamikdash. Once you're saying Shir HaMalos, you're already walking up the steps of the Beis Hamikdash. The Rebbe is already taking us up to the Beis Hamikdash. However, Baruch Hashem, I didn't pay attention to this till the end of the year because then it would be very scary. If you look at Kuf Chav, the Kapitel Kuf Chav, you see it's like a Hakkitzah. Shir HaMalos, Batzanosali Karasi Ya'alein. It's a Shekach Kapitel. It starts with Batzanosali. We started at Yud Alef Nissan last year. And said, as soon as we after Yud Alef Nissan, the first major tragedy after that was Meron. And then we had Surfside. Then we had a war in Eretz Yisrael. Remember that? We had a war in Eretz Yisrael. It was Baruch Hashem not too long, but there was a. And then we had the war now in Ukraine. And the resurfacing again of COVID. And all the Mishikas. This year was a year that's like, it's ugly. It's beyond description of how so much suffering there was. But one of the shocking things that people are Rebbe asked me today, what's my take on the Ukraine, on the war in Ukraine? The problem that's very hard with this whole war is, this whole war is stupid. The Rebbe said that Melech HaMashiach is already making saving in the world. Melech HaMashiach is already telling the nations to drop their arms. And the Torah Melech HaMashiach started already. The Rebbe spoke about Russia, because Russia is one of those that are already disarming. And politically, there's suddenly an aggression, and in such a manner, today they're coming out with all the atrocities and war crimes. They don't believe anybody in anything. That's part of the Kapitel. You know what it says in the Kapitel? It's like the entire year is full of brother nices. Everybody is telling so much Russian in the media. There's so much deception, so much cover up, so much. Every day you find out new stories of everybody was covering on this and covering on that and covering. Anyways, but how do you make sense of a war? I'm not getting into the philosophy. I don't know. It's not supposed to happen. But the interesting thing is, if you take a look at the Kapitel, what does it say at the end of the Kapitel? If you put that into the Rebbe's mouth, it's one thing. The Rebbe is saying, Ani Shalom. I already quotes the Shalom. They're coming to war. In other words, they're misbehaving. They're not listening to the Melech. He said, and that's why Dr. Russia, the whole thing, they're coming out of this war to have this others. That's what they're telling us. The whole thing is like not making any sense because there's no game. They're losing on all levels. Okay. When I was looking at it a little stronger, I noticed something interesting. When you take a look at the year from Yud Alef Nissan to Yud Alef Nissan, there are, and there's 7 psukim. So if you want to divide each pasuk for another piece of the year, I don't know what this was, but this is just the way my head I was looking at submission. Maybe we divide. So this from Yud Alef Nissan was a leap year, 385 days in the Hebrew. So 385 divided by 7 is 55 days. So each pasuk is 55 days. So I looked, when does this last pasuk describe? Which, by the way, when it talks about the Shemitah that David bought, what does it say? The Shemitah on the 7th year of Muhammad. There's war. So I looked, when did the war start? The war started on Chav Beis Adar Aleph. That was in the morning. It was a Thursday morning. I know that my son got married Wednesday night. And during the Chassid, that's when Russia came rolling in. I told my son, see, your Chassid started the World War III.
The war should only be out.
Yeah, sure. So I said, you're coming in with a bang. In any case, that was 49 days before Yud Alef Nissan. Okay, it works. It's within the 55 days, but I said, man, it's got to be accurate, perfect. So I started looking online. What happened a few days earlier? maybe I can find something that happened on the day, 55 days. So what did I find? That the news stories on that day was that the United States was trying to stop the war from happening. Russia was demanding certain things from NATO that they should, and the United States was supposed to give certain security concerns, address Russia's security concerns about Ukraine. So the United States handed over a few days earlier, the State Department, some kind of a suggestion or whatever that they would do. On the day, that was the day that Russia declined it. And Russia said, gave five. You know, you didn't relieve our concerns. So that's Mamash, Anishon. There's a last attempt for peace. Anishon, so the Achalot kind of peace. To ignore it all, it's going to be Mamash 55 days. Take a look a little deeper. What does it say before that in the passage? Oyo likigarti, woe is to me that I'm living Meshech, Oyo likigarti Meshech, Shachanti in the Holy Keder. I was sitting on the plane, actually today, as I was coming here today, I was saying the capital, and it occurred to me, hey, Oyo likigarti Meshech, I thought about a while ago. What's Meshech? Meshech is one of the countries associated with Mohammed the Dogger. Meshech, the Tuval, Meshech, what's Meshech? So years ago, someone mentioned that Meshech was related to Russia because Meshech